Okay, thank you so much, Carter. And welcome to,
Second, the attendees to.
yeah, can everyone hear on line? Everyone's in and did you push the, accept the
Yep.
recording, right?
Everyone's sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Carter.
Mark, I just.
Okay, tonight, we are going to, let us hope, finalize our resolution on the city of yes for economic opportunity. Late this afternoon, we received a long document from George James. And Eugene and I had a chance to look at it somewhat and put some of the comments inside our suggested resolution, which was good. We also have just there's another document that's circulating. I don't know if I have all the documents in front of me. Oh, answers from the CPC's answers to the questions that we had raised at our last meeting. I haven't had a chance to really see those because they came in also late today. But I know some of you reviewed it, so you can help out on that. I would just let you know that in January, we will be working on HPD and gaming. But HPD is not here tonight and they agreed to hold over to January, which is very helpful considering all that we have to do. So all present and accounted for except for Bo, who said he would be late. So I think, Eugene, is there any problem with just diving in?
Are you taking attendance or if you'd like to go ahead and...
We welcome Roy Ruiz from Deborah Glick's office, who's here with us tonight.
Yes, I'd also like to recognize that Chelsea Evans from the Department of City Planning is also in attendance. So she had said that, she circulated the answers, the official answers from DCP to our written questions. So she's also in attendance. So if there are any follow-up questions we have for DCP, we can direct them to her as well.
And Eugene, I'm sorry, did you get me Michael Levine as present?
Yes, so Michael Levine is present.
Thank you.
Yes. Anita is the only person who's not here tonight. Oh, Connor,
Okay, Connor is also in the attendees. So Connor Allerton from Chris Marte's office. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Connor.
Well, she declined. We need to ask Chelsea if she wants to accept the invitation to be a panelist.
Well, she declined. I mean,
well, we can just ask her one more time to make sure she.
we'll do it orally, I think.
Oh, Chelsea, do you, if you raise your hand if you want to be promoted, please, just so that we're clear on we're happy to promote you. But can you raise your hand?
Okay.
Okay.
She's able to speak now, so if she wants to unmute.
Okay.
She says.
Oh, she says in 20 minutes. She's having some commuter issues. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Chelsea. That's very helpful. Well, we had a very spirited discussion last time, and it was actually the notes from that discussion were very helpful in creating this resolution that we have before us. So I think we've already done a lot of work, so that's fantastic. George, the first paragraph here is from George James's report. And Eugene and I felt that it was more positive overall. His view was more positive than ours had than ours was, and that in looking over all of our recommendations, that was pretty clear. But
Because he's not only dealing with that.
exactly, exactly. But we're talking about maybe putting some color on that first paragraph to say that we are a little more, that, you know, reflecting our skepticism. So the whereases are. The whereases, I think there are 18 proposals, but we declined to comment all of them. So there is, as you asked, the first whereas is sort of our overall concern. Conflicts of uses. And there is subsequent problems with quality of life issues. The overall hostility to housing. Not just the second floor commercial, but, you know, there's an overall feeling that this is not a pro-housing document. You definitely all were very concerned about performance standards and the inability to really enforce things because of the two goes hand in hand. And then the lack of community board, the ability for the community board to insert itself in many, in some of the cases where we are used to inserting ourselves and where we feel our comments and involvement are important. I guess the first question I would have is if these are the themes, if we need to put together the themes that we want to put forward.
But we would expand upon them, right?
We could, or
Otherwise, you know,
Sorry to interrupt. Was there a request to link something? I think it's your draft resolution. Is that something you want me to
I'll
post?
put it in the chat.
I can post it and put it in the chat. Did I do that?
Eugene, how do you feel about that? Putting a draft.
There's two requests. One is for the responses from city planning. Pete had asked if that's something that can be shared. And then Jeffrey is asking if there's a link for the resolution for the public to review. I would say for the city planning responses, Mark, I just sent you a PDF version of that. If you can put that up on our Google Drive, and we can share the link. I can't share a document into the Zoom.
No worries. I can take care of it. Just want to make sure that you want me to. That's all.
He just wanted you to okay it.
Yeah, that's fine.
And the resolution too?
I mean, the resolution we're working on, I mean, I would prefer that we wait until we have a more firm draft. This is just a
Very good.
working copy.
No worries. I'll get on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mara. And thank you, Eugene. Well, Frederica's asking us to be even more expansive, but all of us have to know that the therefore be it resolved that what we're reading and, yeah, and, you know, we, you know, want good whereas, but we want to land very firmly on the resolve. But so. All right, then let's continue on and then we'll come back. But so my question stands. Do you think that these are this list of themes is complete? Based on our discussion. Conflict of uses, quality of life, hostility to housing, performance standards, and enforcement, and lack of community board involvement. Those are things that you were all very strong on last time.
Yes.
Okay. Now, we had agreed last time not to comment on proposals 1 and 2, so the comment start with number 3, small scale theme production as a right. And we all expressed concern that types of manufacturing be allowed in C districts and causing conflict. And one of the things is that I think David was very clear on this, the impact of 24-hour maker activities. And he had a clear example, but that's, you know, just an example. Does anyone have anything to add? Did we miss anything?
One thing, and and it actually comes up later, but now I'm seeing it connect to everything, is that when we're in this other section about, where you have this on number 3 over here, like in their plan, they say a small business is 75 people. I mean, that's a giant business.
Yeah.
And, my building, the floors are 14,000 square foot each, one floor is one business. I don't think 75 people have ever worked on any floor ever, so that even when they say makers, I mean, are you talking about one person in a little space, or are you talking about 75 people who are doing, something quiet? So the number is really important, and that I felt it just slipped in that 75 number, and it seemed way off me. That was like a red flag. And so when you say, when we're talking about makers,
So not only C zone, but C overlay zones under residential areas, so.
right?
I mean,
But you're both talking about totally different. You're talking about a very large building.
No, I'm
You're
talking,
talking about a very small building, so we need to.
well, I'm just talking
that
about like in a small building. We're still talking about how many people can be in the space.
I'm not.
And yeah, and that's the thing they seem to not be dealing with at all. Well, I mean, there's even if we say 24 hours, yes. So that's something that they just seem to ignore or way play down.
Well, in our specific recommendations for proposal 11, we do talk about business hours, but we don't talk about number of employees. And we can say there's no cap on square footage or reasonable cap.
Yeah, I mean, all they say here, Katie, is that you have types of manufacturing that will be allowed. It's more than the type, it could be a quietish thing, but if you have 12 people doing it instead of one, it has an impact. So it's that,
Which number are we talking about?
well, I just thought of it right off the bat when what the first thing Katie was talking about, small scale clean production. It's still
It's different than home. I'm just.
I
trying to talk about this.
wait, I'm sorry.
I'm trying to talk about this as
Yeah.
opposed to the larger, which one?
Well, I just think it affects all of them. It sounds like it's all about number of people. I mean, everything could be fine if there's 2 people, but it could be not fine even.
But home occupancy limited, right?
Well, I'm not talking about home occupancy. This is, number 3, small scale clean production as of right. Of manufacturing allowed in C districts, that's not home. I mean, I know it says impacts the 24-hour maker. Activities will be a negative, but I didn't think it was exclusively about.
But that's not
Homemaker.
residential homes. That's allowing a manufacturing use on a, not in a home, that would be an area that had ground for commercial.
Mixed use building is all I'm talking about really is where it's mixed use. Okay. To be clear, sorry.
I'm gonna ask Connor. He has his hand up. Can you,
Well, I just wanted to, yeah, if it's helpful to clarify a bit of that. I think there's 3 different things that I heard being sort of discussed just now. One is number 3, one is number 5, and one is number 11. And just to, if it's helpful, number 3, like Carter mentioned, it's just allowing number 3 is allowing new production uses in commercial districts that didn't allow those kinds of use. It's just an expansion of production-based uses that are not commercial uses. They're defined as like production-based uses. So that's all that number 3 is. While it's impactful, it has less to do with occupancy, et cetera. Number 5 has to do with. Yep.
Connor, I'm just gonna stop you. Do we not have commercial buildings with residences in them in our
Yes.
community board? And that this is now allowing for maker uses in those buildings would conflict with residential patterns.
Yeah. So it's still a mixed use building in the sense that a lot of these buildings have residents above, or they even, especially in commercial overlays where it's a residential district with a commercial overlay that allows maybe ground floor or first 2 floors. to be commercial, those kinds of buildings in their commercial areas of those buildings would now allow types of production uses that were previously only allowed in manufacturing.
Yes, and I think that's what Susan, because of the kind of building she lives in her neighborhood.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I agree with what Susan's saying, but just to make sure that it's just to clarify between the
Okay, good.
points, number 5, because I heard the 75 person occupancy thing, I think that really pertains to number 5, which talks about having residential and commercial use on the same floor, or having commercial uses above residential uses, both of which are not allowed now. In most districts, some of these things are special provisions that are allowed in some special districts, but just on the whole, those would be new allowances. And the 75 occupancy thing comes in when it comes to the environmental standards that I know George James talked about, with the 15-foot barriers and other environmental standards that those kinds of uses have to meet in order to be able to be placed on the same floor as residential use. But as George explained it, small uses don't have to abide by those environmental standards, and the 75 occupancy is sort of how they distinguish between small and large. And I think it's an opinion of our office that that's concerning. I think George has also flagged this, that those environmental standards should apply to any business regardless of size if it's located on the same floor as a residential use or above residential use.
So but this is about number 5.
Yeah, I just heard that was brought up, the 75 person,
Yeah,
so I just wanted to clarify that was the number 5 thing.
Yeah.
And then number 11, as you'll get to, is home occupations, which is when you have a business inside a residential unit. And right now, you can only have one employee who doesn't live there. It can only go up to 500 square feet, or 25% of the unit, whichever is less. And they want to change it to up to 3 employees who don't live there, 49% of the apartment, and no square footage cap.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I think for number 3, we're going to say this is an issue in mixed use in mixed use buildings in our district because of the nature of our district. Okay, so okay to move on to 4.
Yes.
This provision turns C zones into M zones. Oh, we did talk about this, and this was the Zara. The thing that jumped out at us is the Zara example, where we have stores that don't have loading docks and don't have enough storage facility to have, 1 or 2 deliveries, or having deliveries 5 days a week and disturb. And that's again because of the mixed use nature of our neighborhoods. And what street are they delivering on? Mercer Street. Yeah. So I tried to capture that sense in this plot. Is that
Which number?
number 4?
So Katie, so
Go ahead.
if I could just ask, so in terms of this discussion, so what we had talked about before was that in framing our resolution, we're going to split out our concerns, right? Proposal by proposal in the whereases, but then the flip side of that is going to be the recommendation, which is going to be in the therefore be it resolved, right? So just for the framework of our discussion right now, are you intending that we go through each of the whereases first, and then we go back to the therefore be it resolves, or should we work through each proposal as a whole? Meaning, do we need to go back and flesh out number 3, the small scale production, right? Because we talked about the whereas, but then what is our actual ask?
Yeah, we don't have 3 under the
Right. So are we okay with this being, just highlighted as a whereas, but then we don't have a specific ask? Is that matching up with what the committee would want? Because keeping in mind, when we discuss these at full board, we're only going to read therefore be it resolves, right? So I think, we need to make sure if we want to make a statement that we have a corresponding, therefore be it resolved.
Yeah, I agree with that. If we're putting it into the whereas, we could have a corresponding.
Right, otherwise it drops off our discussion, right? We're never
Yeah.
gonna
It
discuss
just
it.
floats out there without a
Yeah.
without.
Right,
Yeah.
it's, we opine on it, but then if we don't actually say, what do we want DCP to do?
Right, I agree with that.
So
And-
should we go?
yeah.
Mhm.
And we should key it in with the key numbers.
Yeah, we should keep it on the same number. So I think before we move on to number 4, then let's finish up the discussion for number 3, right? And talk about what is it we want the city, because right now I don't think we have anything,
No, we don't.
right? So in our notes, when we went through, and Katie and I went through the notes from our discussion, we had a lot of discussion, for example, on the small scale production. And I know we went through the examples of the bakeries and things, the wholesale businesses. What is our actual ask for DCP then for this recommendation?
I mean, looking at George's comments on this, and he's very clear that it really doesn't, this proposal doesn't really help in Manhattan. It's sort of good for anywhere USA.
He said that, I saw that.
Yeah,
Right.
but he doesn't help us with
Well, he's not, yeah, and I think he had kind of said that several times when we had our meeting with George. He said whether or not our CB is going to be in favor or not in favor, that's not for him to say.
no,
So,
but he
right,
doesn't have.
give us the background, but in terms of, are we in favor and what do we want to ask? I don't think we can rely on George to give that. That's really, we need to come up with that ourselves.
I think that what was discussed was, things like a bagel place or a bakery or something that would manufacture.
I remember. Yep. I remember
manufacturing their use, so they were literally manufacturing bread or that was the example I was given. And
Yeah, and they were like picking up at like 4 a.m.
right,
or,
but
you
what
know.
happens is they have morphed, those places morphed into a real wholesale distribution
Right.
kind of use. And I think that's what we need to sort of separate out. That, yeah, okay, it's okay to manufacture for use within your establishment, but once it becomes like a distribution center point or a wholesale point, where trucks are coming into the neighborhood or in and out of the neighborhood, all night long into the morning, that is not something that should be in a steam. That's not that's not a small scale production as of right situation. Now we have something quite different.
So should we ask DCP to put in a definition for a small scale? What is a small scale production or small scale manufacturing? And
Well, I'd like to say something like manufacturing for use within the establishment, as opposed to, to expanding it into a sort of a wholesale business. That's
right,
quite,
so it has to be paired.
And
To,
delivery, I mean, the delivery aspect with the bakery is,
A realistic example that came up is like somebody using 3D printers to design glasses, for example. And that, when does that become a manufacturing use where you're creating something in that fashion as opposed to a regular commercial use? Those are some of the areas that I think that people envision in a modern world.
A modern manufacturing, right, the maker spaces.
Maker businesses as opposed to bakery, which I think has always been a hurdle, right, in the city, because we had a lot of different uses in different areas. But the impacts of somebody having a store that also has small scale manufacturing for use there, right, or for.
but what are you saying, but use outside the actual store that they're.
But I'm just bringing up an example of what had previously been talked about under maker. I don't know where that goes, with this, but that was an example that we had come up with during the Soho rezoning as, a maker use. And where do you fit in that type of production?
Well, that's,
You know, 'cause that's something that's maybe not as objectionable. That not high scale, it's not a lot of trucks coming.
Well, how about this? Manufacturers should only make goods for retail sale on premises in a C zone. Connor seems to be nodding. But what do we talk about? How do we talk about hours? Within regular business hours or,
What is that?
I mean, this is talking about I think that we are hearing objection to 24-hour production.
Yeah, because that impinges then on quality of life, right? I mean, that goes back to our fundamental, this, you know, the stressors in our community, which is like the businesses versus the residents that live here. Right.
This goes back to, and Connor, maybe you can help us. We had asked the question, we have it in the document, which I don't know if you have talked about performance standards, but performance standards just aren't applicable in most of what we're talking about, from my understanding. But that's what, there's no measurement of anything.
Describe performance standards.
A performance standard is smell, vibration, it's generally in manufacturing districts. And there's a measurement of some sort. I mean, you can look it up in the.
Yeah.
But it's not, there's nothing that measures any of this. And that's what leaves us in a bind. Because then we can't characterize what our concern is, which is what's the impact. And I'm not so sure we are totally objecting to everything. But what we have is an objection to the impacts, but there's nowhere to measure it. Because that's not provided for here. And that goes through with most of these
So I think that
changes.
so I think, Carter, what we want to say is we want to review performance standards before.
There aren't any.
I know, but we're saying,
established.
yeah, CPC should establish performance standards before.
Equivalents.
Well, why do you say that couple changes lack performance?
That's right.
Right.
Or a way to measure impacts.
What does it mean, performance at number 2 under the there? Performance standards, clear enforcement and as a rule are far too prevalent.
Where is it? So wait, let me finish where I am.
My concern is I've introduced talking about performance standards and it doesn't.
Oh, Katie, when you have a chance, Connor has his hand raised.
And it doesn't exist, so if we keep framing it, we'll go off track.
That's why
So I'm just
that's why
bringing that up to everybody.
Okay.
at the very beginning, the 4 bulleted items. Raising the following issues, need a little fleshing out, not paragraphs, but just a little fleshing out.
Yes. No, yeah.
But I take that in as a weakness because it's in here everywhere, but we haven't.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist, so we're talking about nothing
Yeah,
from the city planning perspective.
okay. I think
So how do we bring it back?
we've just got to put it in over and over.
No, but putting it in is false. Because it doesn't exist.
No, should we say the proposals lack performance standards? Number 3.
Okay, but let me just add on to that. It's-
Connor has his hand
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry.
Connor,
And Michael Levine as well.
Connor?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, there are, part of the proposal includes, environmental standards to be enforced for commercial uses that they're proposing can now go on the same floor as residential uses or above residential uses. Like that include air quality, noise, and vibration.
Maybe some people, they don't
And
know.
so-
You know.
Sorry. And so, they exist there. They're just not for this section. They're not for, ground floor commercial uses or specific, but it says, where production use is listed, but they're only using it for this new proposal number 5. But it exists, and you could say that this language should also apply to these production uses on ground floor as well.
So please apply the performance standards from
It's not
proposal 5.
performance standards. We have to eliminate the performance standard totally from where we're talking about it and put it into the language that's in the proposal. Because somebody reading this won't know what that means.
Because it's not defined.
Yes, in this case. It is,
And just so you know, yeah, like, I mean, I can also send this section to you if that's helpful. It's, it gives you, but I'm just saying there is precedent for having performance, like environmental standards like this in the zoning. So you're just asking to also have it apply here and maybe tweak it depending on what you want to advocate for.
Thank you. May I add one thing that we might want to do is add as a performance standard hours of operation. I think it's an issue, and I think we can state that here.
Hours of, I just missed one word,
Operation.
operation, yeah,
Operation. Hours of operation is very important when we
Yeah.
do buildings.
yes.
We don't see it anywhere. I think we should be thinking of adding it in locations such as this.
Michael, would we also want to add, beyond just hours of operation, would we also want to add like noise?
Oh,
You know,
definitely,
those-
definitely.
I just want to jump in as someone who's lived in a mixed-use building for decades.
Yes.
Offices don't have, these commercial spaces, I've never seen had restrictions on hours of operation. I mean, they just don't function that way. So I can't really see that happening.
Frederica, sorry.
Yeah, I want to suggest that we scrap the number one, whereas. And rather than dealing with it in general way, just plug those concerns into the specific proposals that are that we like them. And just start with whereas CB2 has specific concerns with respect to the impact of the following proposals. And then as I understood what Eugene said, I think that we should summarize the proposals, but save our critique of them for the therefore part. Is that what you were suggesting, Eugene?
Into the
Sorry,
result.
say that again. So,
Say it again.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm suggesting that we eliminate number one. It just muddies the picture. All right, with the kind of the themes, and go directly to summarizing briefly the proposals that we feel have that we want to address. Take out all the criticism of them in the whereas part and save it for the therefore part. So in other words, let's just say number 4. This provision turns C zone into M zones. It deals with the decrease in the requirement for loading zones, period. And then in number 4, under the therefores, we say we are concerned that the decrease in loading zones will needs to be made in parallel with an increase in on-site storage. And so you're saving all of your commentary for the therefore part.
Well, actually, I agree with you on number 4, because that's exactly where I thought we were gonna go. We didn't put it in the middle of the airport.
So you just take out all the editorializing in the wherefore section and put it into the therefore section.
Well, the first thing is the getting rid of the theme, which is something that everybody wanted before, so I think people should reflect on that a minute, as one suggestion. And I totally agree with number 4, which we haven't really discussed yet, but I think we can discuss it in those terms.
our concern with loading docks is always volume, right? Because a loading dock's only useful for an appropriate size truck.
No, it's
So
more
we're
than.
starting at different size. trucks that are gonna practically-
It was a question that they didn't have a loading dock and we
Understood,
had too much noise,
but my point was the volume,
the volume of delivery.
correct?
Yeah.
And without
Upper store.
without proper storage and without appropriate facilities to receive rates. Because the days of backing up, an 18-wheeler are.
Right.
I mean, maybe they're not over, but large box trucks also seem to be not as prevalent. Is that just me? I don't know. I don't see them as much. What I see are much smaller. vehicles. And it's the volume of the.
A more
unloading.
nonstop delivery instead of a giant truck coming in.
Right.
We have big stores, we have big restaurants.
No, but I'm saying, but a loading dock. In the traditional ways is for a truck to pass.
Yeah.
Well, can I just say one thing? Realistically, how many loading docks are there now? I mean, and do we expect them ever to be built? They've been removed
Yes.
sort of.
We have one within this block, in the Paulson Center. Which is a building that appropriately should have loading docks.
No, they should, and they do.
I think they're free.
Yeah, they do. You're right. But in other areas though, right?
Well, I can
I'm sure
tell how we know.
Disney, I'm sure, has loading docks.
Google.
Yeah, Google probably
Really?
does,
Already?
they have space for vehicle driving.
Concern isn't with the ones that have them, it's with the ones that don't, or with new buildings that would be built with less.
Right.
And that's Hudson Square. I mean, that's where we're gonna see this.
Right. Okay, the
But
west.
I'm.
There's a comment there's a hand raised from the public. Are we in public session where we're gonna be answering these? I think we never made that clear.
And
Okay, but there's a hand raised from a community board member. So, first, what I'm concerned about, going back to number 3, small scale, clean production as of right, I mean, and you bring up the new main stuff that is a bit like the 3D print. And that seems, of course, that we have to say it, but if we have to look down the road. If that 3D printer all of a sudden really gets in production and then starts becoming on the street, loading, and it becomes distribution in a wholesale business without a loading dock on the street in an urban environment. That's a real concern to me. So it's a real concern to incorporate what Carter's talking about, looking at new kinds of manufacturing uses, not the bagel and the bakery stuff, which is traditional. And I'm agreeing with that, but performance standards that you talk about have nothing to do with morphing into a distribution center. And that's what bothers me.
Right, so our concern are the impacts on quality, life, for lack of a better term.
Okay, whatever it is.
Outside of certain times, which is even why Michael astutely brings in hours of operations.
Mhm.
But maybe instead of hours of operation, that we look at minimizing impact of performance standards outside of certain times, right?
Okay, with that.
Because a 3D printer quietly printing all night is not a concern.
Not a concern, but if he has a huge amount and it's not so quiet anymore, those are your performance standards. But I'm talking
So
about.
if we talk about environmental standards, which I think is what Connor said the right term is, if we talk about environmental standards outside of certain hours, like hours, right? This is not a new concept within regulations, but maybe that's what we.
Right, it's not just environmental, it's nature of business. Whether that small scale clean production, this is really a terrible kind of thing to do. These are in C1 overlay zones as well as the C zone. And that CB2 is a C1 overlay community.
Yeah.
I mean, we have some pure R zones, pure C zones, but this is an overlay community. And I'm telling you that in the future, not this year, not 5 years, but it's going to be for a while, the city of yes, because they're ramming it down that road. And the other one lasted for 60 years. And we're going to see.
50 years.
Huh?
50 years, they said.
Yeah. Okay, I take it back.
Could we just summarize and say that we're skeptical of relaxing or liberalizing the mixing, the liberal mixing, let's call it, of residential and commercial, and liberalizing the regulations regarding manufacturing in our district in the absence of any performance standards relating to hours of operation, noise, vibration,
Right,
etc.
but what I'm talking about is a first floor retail operation of 5,000 square feet. That it's now manufacturing, not only for their establishment, but for a larger audience and a larger distribution. And performance standards are important, no doubt, because we don't know how 3D printing is going to be in the future. It can be allowed manufacturing use. All I'm saying is the nature of the business, manufacturing in overlay zones should be for that establishment, not as a focal point of wider distribution.
Right, we can add that as well, but
When we talk about 5,000 square foot floor plate, it's kind of like on the outlier in our area. The places that you end up looking at that kind of a square footage. So or no, very few exceptions.
It's not
In Hudson Square.
It's not in the West, but it's in our.
But that's, there's that may be in the West Village because there's an M zone right in it.
Maybe.
But it's so limited, and the reality of it being used for that.
Understood, but
Then how do we look at the majority of the area where this might be an impact? Because that's, I think, the impact of 30, 40 years out of less equipment in order
You're trying to do something which I agree with, but this is like, they're trying to say, forget about differentiating Soho, Hudson Square and the West Village. This is for the whole.
Yeah, exactly.
No, right, but I'm just saying, Connor was sitting next to me at the last meeting and he very appropriately looked at the zoning. To say, hey, what areas are we actually talking about?
I agree, and
And-
West Village does not have a lot.
And we don't have many,
We don't.
yeah,
we
We
don't
have
have.
a handful of larger spaces, but they're not a lot. But this isn't Soho, this is in NoHo, this is in Hudson Square. Essentially, maybe some stuff on West Street that hasn't been developed as. It hasn't been developed as residential yet. Is there anything on West Street that's
A
not?
couple
residential?
little blocks.
Huh?
A couple little blocks.
But you see it on the big streets. I mean, what if like all the pharmacies closed, all these empty CVS's, that we have now because they overbuilt them. Those are big spaces to become manufacturing and a lot of them
I just
have
do
apartments.
5,000.
But isn't our concern at the end of the day is not to stymie the use of those spaces, but it's to minimize the
Yes.
impacts. And so
Yeah.
that's why we should be kind of visionary to look forward and say, these are the normal times that
Yeah.
people do things. Which is if they're reimagining zoning is supposed to reduce conflicts, right? At least that's theoretically, I'm not a
Yeah.
planner, but anybody who's been in that realm. So if you're trying to reduce conflicts, our biggest concern in a mixed use environment is conflicts to residential. And we keep hitting up with that over and over, and we see that the city is not addressing it. And that has to do with upper floor uses and building one next to another, where
Yeah.
there's noise from one.
Exactly.
Noise uses on rooftops.
Right, because what we're
Trucks
talking
running all the time.
Top use was the big
But-
thing he pointed
But the
out.
city's direction, flip side is zoned trash, commercial pickup, which happens at night. So the city is going in other directions, but we should stick to a consistent.
I agree, and what we're
Okay, so-
looking at here is zoning and residential. I mean,
Yes.
We may be seeing other stuff down the road when they talk about residential part of the city of yes. But right now, what's in front of us is draconian or really terrible residential.
Yes. Right. Yeah, and we say that up the top. We
Yeah.
say that up front.
And that wasn't the priority of the study.
Yep.
And they're gonna say, oh, well, but wait, next year we're coming out with our residential. We're coming it up.
That's our February meeting. Be ready. So I'm just gonna say on number 5 in the whereases. Number 5, commercial and upper floors, we should take out new construction and step elevators. That was just a slug. But in the information session with DCP, it became clear this proposal was envisioned for new construction. And that the issues involved in retrofitting older buildings had not been thought out. And I think that's good, and I think we have a good resolve, which you can. I'm happy with it.
number 5 in the whereases you just read. Kind of found fault with the fact that issues involving retrofitting old buildings have not been thought out. But number 5 in the therefore says it should be expressly limited to new construction. The two things that you're pulling out is like, they don't.
You're not asking
together.
them I think your point is you're not asking them in that whereas. to do something for the altar. You're right.
They're not only.
You're not asking them in the therefore, yeah.
Do we want any change? I didn't hear any desire for change in the old buildings. We actually want to keep what we have.
If I'm gonna take that out in the whereas.
Or we need.
The retrofitting.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, then I think we need to expressly say that.
So are we happy with? We're happy with the situation now because we don't want commercial above residential. Which is what we're getting.
It's impossible to do that in all the buildings.
No, George said that someone could gain control of an entry on the ground floor and put in an internal staircase and an internal elevator. He said there were ways to get around it.
Right, I don't mean impossible, I mean an impossible situation. I mean,
Oh, you
difficult
could-
situation.
yeah.
I mean, old buildings vibrate, they creak, you know, they
It
conduct
does-
noise through the walls. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that new construction. Stress, but we are a community, a starter community. Building. Yes. You want to say?
I have a question.
Oh, yes,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Yeah, because
for myself sorry, I'm just trying to inform myself of this process, which is something that I've been following for a while now, but my question is the changing of the zoning, and this is mixed use, right? Would that affect the allowable square footage of the lot of the zoning area?
Or would it affect the FAR?
I don't know. Did they talk about that at all?
I don't think I don't think I saw anything in my reading or in George's analysis of anything that would affect the total FAR in a building.
Maybe a question.
No, sorry. Yeah, no, they're not really changing FAR. They're mostly focusing on use. There's a couple. There's a couple small changes to FAR. One thing that they want to do. The only thing that I've picked up on, well, they're creating this new C7 district, right? They're not mapping it yet, but they're reconfiguring C7 to be a complete, right now it's just for like open outdoor amusement. So they are changing the FAR for C7s, but only for newly mapped C7s. Right now, there's only 2 or 3 C7s in the whole city. They're like in Coney Island. So just to flag, they're creating a completely new C7 district with new FAR amounts. But to map those, they would have to go through ULURP again. The other thing is there's a couple places where they're aligning commercial and community facility FAR in a few C1 and C2 districts. But they don't exist in CB2. But it's a small change, but they're basically saying, yeah, they're just adjusting them so that they match. But I don't think that really affects you. But the purposes of this text amendment is to update the uses, not the density.
Okay,
I have another question, I'm sorry. When it comes to small scale versus large scale, and what we were talking about, they were talking about employees. Is there like a criteria for how those employees are employed? Like you can have 75 people on your payroll and look like you have 75 people working with you, but maybe like you have 20 actually using this space. So how is there like a strict criteria for that? Currently, the existing.
and how would you enforce it anyway, Roy? That's one of
It's
us.
an occupancy limit or something.
Yeah, but who's gonna,
Even in this room, there.
who's gonna tell DOB? Who's gonna know what the occupancy limit is and call DOB? We were actually looking at it in a different way, Roy, last time. We said, what if you had one apartment with 3 employees and then you purchased another apartment and you put 3 employees in there, and then you purchase the next one, you put 3 employees. Now you've got 9, or do you have 3 and 3 spaces? I mean, it's very, you can look at it both ways, and either way. Very good. Oh, I saw your hand up, Frederica.
So number 5, which is commercial on upper floors, actually connects to the conflict of uses in a single building. And lead. Number 5 in the whereas, it's commercial on upper floors. And that relates to the themes that I'm suggesting be and,
All right.
but that's conflict of use in a single building. So I feel that somewhere we should use that verbiage, that that's our concern. And are you saying that it's okay in new building, new construction, because they'll be building a building better suited for it? Katie? Like, why in the,
We all, I mean, we're happy. It's not what I'm saying. It's, we're trying to reflect what we all said together. So if we have to revise it, that's great.
you said in the therefore, as you say, this should be expressly limited to new construction, a construction approved after the date of the City of Yes text change. Why different about new construction and mixing use?
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, now I see what you're saying. Thank you.
Good. There's a lot in the building construction types. But most of our retrofit old buildings, they're not generally built with the separations inherent.
Right.
For like noise and other things. When, you know, because we,
Like the separate elevators can be accommodated.
like we
in
talked,
construction.
we talked about this a lot, and I keep going back into Soho, but we talked about having 3 uses, right? You could have retail, regular commercial, and residential all in the same building, mix and match to whatever needs. And if it's purpose-built, you can mitigate the issues between them. But if you retrofit
We should say that.
in a building, you know, it's, you can also mitigate for it. But if you just suddenly swap a use on a floor without a change, it becomes Susan's example of, you know, in your existing building where you find around it.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting is that we work into the language conflict of uses in a single building that doesn't have separate elevators and other similar accommodations. So.
But we don't want them to build them either.
Or cannot have.
Well, that's.
So
why
what
I
is the suggestion then, Frederica?
say is the therefore, for number 5, I think needs to have a different focus.
Well, I think we have a couple things. So first of all, philosophically, how do we feel about, even in a new building, even with everything that Carter just said, mixing residences and commercial and maybe these light maker uses? Because people, you know, I think Susan has pointed out that these uses are not in, these uses may be even in a new building in conflict.
That's,
You know, who does someone, do you want to live in a building where there's a lot of commercial traffic from the
But
get-go?
I think that's where the environmental
Right.
issue, you know, measurement comes in, protecting against
I
that.
can't say performance issues anymore.
Well, I mean, Connor used the language, and I think it's appropriate because it exists elsewhere, right?
Right. I'm just kidding you.
Yeah, but you know, it's. If it's something, well,
I guess if they have a separate elevator and a separate door under this new construction, it might be okay, but I hear people complaining. And Eugene and I were even talking about this afternoon, that when you live in a building and then all of a sudden 10 people come in to do something commercial, you don't know who they are. You feel, you know,
Well, there's more people coming in and out of a commercial manufacturing building, you know, than in residential, harder to, you know, if there's more turnover, there's more change. But in a new building that's been built, you do have a better chance for soundproofing than.
Right.
Yeah.
You do have a better chance for better building construction. And I
Right.
think that was what was driving, I mean, going back to Carter's, what he was saying is we would expect that a new building, hopefully it would be built with better standards that would
And
be
also, I
purposely,
think we said, in a new building, we could ask for separate entrances.
Well, that's what they have that in here.
Yeah, so just to clarify, like, they're only allowing this if there are separate, if it's completely separated. So, if it's, you cannot, like, there has to be a barrier between, like, separate elevators, separate entrances. No ability to interact on the, if they're on the same floor, they can't, there has to be a barrier. You can't, be able to even like see people who are doing the commercial use versus the residential. And in terms of the extra environmental requirements, like the 15-foot barrier and the noise and the vibration, everything, those are triggered. The 75 occupant thing comes from a place of assembly permit. So the way that the language they use is if you require a place of assembly certificate, then you have to meet those standards. And a place of assembly is required whenever 75 or more public members are gathered indoors. So that's
And
where
we
the
talk about-
75 comes.
Can we talk about the barrier of 15 feet between uses? Do we think that's sufficient?
And it's also only needed if you have a place of assembly right now, as proposed. If you're having a small business, even if it's really loud, you don't need the 15-foot barrier.
This is the problem.
Connor, what our understanding has been, for example, if you have an office building or if you had a retail store, that you're not required to have a place of assembly permit, even if the occupancy is over 75, because people are not assembling.
Right,
And
it's members of the public.
Right, is it members? I don't know the exact, but it's gathering for something, right? As opposed to conducting.
Yeah, the way I understand it is it's
Like a retail
it's
store
for
wouldn't need a place of
it's like it's because of like social cultural purposes. It's for like events and things. It's not
Right.
just regular offices. That's how I understand it. And so, if you have like a restaurant, if you have a restaurant that seats more than 75, you need it, but not like necessarily an office. So I think the point is that not everyone's going to need these extra environmental to meet these extra environmental standards. And it's hard to predict who's going to need it and who won't, maybe. And I think George mentioned this is that what there's the possibility of having everyone need to meet these environmental standards because you don't know, like a small commercial use could be just as disruptive potentially.
Yeah,
Right, I think he said like a small and noisy is somehow okay, but large, a small and noisy is different from a large and noisy. Right, I mean, it's the noisy part that's the issue.
Connor, the 15-foot has always seemed arbitrary to me. I mean, in reality, what you don't want is a residence and a business to share a wall, a floor, a ceiling. So in a sense, it's almost like they have to build around that. So I don't know I kept trying to think about the 15-foot and it seemed, I don't know I have no idea how they came up with that, but that, the not sharing of the wall is so important.
I mean, I thought that the feeling at the last discussion was, why are we putting commercial on top of residential? The idea that commercial is always below residential is a good basic principle. And when we do this other thing, who knows where how they're gonna get the separate staircase, elevator, and then all of a sudden.
You're talking about all the buildings.
Or the newer building.
No, only in the older building, the newer buildings, but maybe, I don't know, we sort of felt that.
I would imagine a new building is gonna have to declare itself, be like a mixed-use building for construction. And a new set of standards would have, but then, with, entrances in the back or the side and, clearly demarcated areas where they can't, it's not gonna be where they can bring in the door grooming service.
Well, that's not what it says.
So all these proposals, right?
But we should,
And I was just looking at one of them, which one was that we do not support this proposal. It's fine for us to say that. What do we actually want to say?
That's what we're
And
looking at.
no, I know, but just to go back to this, which areas are really critical to CB2? And I just bring that up because there's a lot here, because we can go on about certain things.
Well, we
Right.
singled out just about every proposal.
But that's,
Yeah.
I mean, do we want, and just as we go through these, some of them, maybe it's okay to just say, we don't support this proposal, and that's it. And I'm not disagreeing, but we only have X amount of time
Tonight.
tonight
Yes,
and through the full board, and that's what I was trying to just,
Carter,
how do we bang through this? Because I don't think we can do the respect. Yeah.
it's the biggest single takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, so let's figure out a larger say on that,
Okay,
because I just,
are you okay on that? Do you agree with that, Eugene?
Sorry, what was that you said? I couldn't hear that last part.
Proposition of like, let's focus in on what's really, the salient, important stuff. And I'm saying, I think, just talking about it and looking at everything, it's this mixing of residential and commercial.
Yeah.
It's really irking us in this
Yeah.
district.
I think it really does. I mean, it's like, it's kind of, if you step away from it a little bit, I mean, are we somehow dealing with like a shortage of commercial space that we're trying to fix? Like, I mean, it seems like they're trying to find ways to put commercial in more places, but do we have a shortage of commercial space in the city? I mean, that's not.
You
it
wait a
doesn't-
couple months, we're trying to put housing in every place.
Right. It's like, which
Yeah.
way are we going?
Yeah, which way are we exactly, right? I mean, it's like they're trying to like put commercial in more like spaces that it couldn't previously exist, but what city are they living in? I mean, that just doesn't seem like that's New York City right now.
Right, Disney will be luxury housing.
So Katie, can we all agree now here today that let's just make a statement that the most problem that we're having is this blending without a lot of whatsoever residential. Can we say that? You feel comfortable in that?
I'm not so sure I'm comfortable saying that, because we already have it. And the blending of commercial, we have non-conforming uses all over the place.
Yeah, but that's.
No, I understand, but the issue we hear over and over and over are the conflicts. And this whole scale changes the equation. You're gonna assume there's gonna be some changes, but what there's not is measurement. There's no way of enforcement. This is always the problem. And so if they're going to make changes, which it seems they're going to, the thing we should be asking for is measurement of the impacts, so that you can follow, you have a framework.
No, there's no question.
Yeah,
I'm saying, we're not talking about loading docks as the main problem here. We're talking about this interblending of residential and commercial, are we not?
Some types of commercial.
Okay, so that's what.
But I mean,
that's what
in
we're talking about.
practicality, I think as Bob Ely has always said, well, we live in a mixed use district everywhere.
I said,
so-
overlay district.
And I'm just, because I look at some of this and it's like, well, it's not right or wrong, but just don't have the impact.
Okay, but your impacts really, we need to focus. We need to focus, so we're not like all over the place.
Well, at the end of our meetings, with George, he went through, I thought he went through and came up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the 18.
We did that.
Well, he, at the end, he kind of summarized what was the most impactful, he thought, for us.
Well, that's good.
Final decision is up to us, of course, but, if you took out amusements, right, and if you took out that, I mean, is the SLID thing really that important, the number 12, the corridor design rules?
Number 12 deals with special districts, and
Okay.
the SLID is our only special district.
Then we would have to
Are you
add,
familiar with it? Because I don't think most people are familiar with it.
It says corridors.
Understand.
yes, but I remember we had,
It's very important
buildings,
for us.
it blends different. But if you want to put it in, I think we have to be more robust in explaining. Other than just saying this proposal would have a negative effect. Right, and then it's saying we want to maintain the rules.
Where's this section on little lot? Page 17.
Didn't George say he was gonna look at that or then?
He's here on page 17. Yeah, he has not given us that analysis. He did say. But the other thing, you know, I don't agree with George on number 6. He, and, you know, he had a holistic view, but number 6, we were very strong on because we don't want to get rid of the separate eating and drinking establishments. Anybody?
Mark emailed it us.
Right, Carter? We don't want, we don't. George was not so upset about proposal 6 as we were, because we, you know, we deal with we deal with use groups, you know, 6, and we want the ability to have eating and drinking establishments in their own group in order to help us deal with the SLA. I don't know, morass.
We don't want to dilute that.
Things that are in group 6.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and so George said some things, but we didn't agree with everything he said.
We don't have to,
Yeah.
but I go back on all this down and at the same time give a little more detail and maybe eliminate, maybe we don't have to deal with amusements.
Just
We
say we're.
really have to, is corner stores really an issue for us?
Well,
It's like probably 3 corners where it's.
Yeah. Oh, so let's just like be more focused.
the corner store, someone was very passionate about West 4th Street, I think it was. You know, trying not to have 4 corners of each block on West 4th Street commercial.
The impacts again, go back to environmental. Not the fact that it's commercial. And we see this throughout all of the non-conforming uses in the R zones. It's when they expand to become eating and drinking and are open till midnight. But 1 in the morning, that people start to have the problems. They don't have a problem if it's the store that closes at 8. So you know, for us to say we don't want commercial on corners, I think is a little bit not the right, what we've heard over and over from the community. What they don't want is the environmental impacts outside of whatever their definition of daytime is.
Expanding better establishment.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what they're concerned with. And I think that because we have this is even a voice that might apply throughout the city, because that's the concern everywhere. Right? You know, I would think in certain areas where it's just residential, all
It's gonna clean.
never ending.
They're gonna pull their hair.
It would be really nice to have a corner.
Community boards are gonna pull their hair.
Yeah, well, it would be very nice to have a corner store. They may welcome it, but then they don't want it
On top of their residence.
late at night.
Open 24 hours.
Because, or maybe they, you know, whatever, but they don't want it noise, they don't want music, but they may not mind it being. So I just,
And you don't forget, Carter, I mean, this is what we do with SLA all the time. Every store has become a drinking establishment. So allowing more spaces to become commercial, that's a problem for us. You know what I mean? That's our problem. It's not one size fits all.
To not make that easier.
But for the corner stores specifically, I mean, for us, I mean, hasn't that ship kind of sailed? I mean, most of our corners have. I mean, we can't, I find it difficult for us to say we're against it when the reality on the ground is, you know, almost every corner has a corner store for us. So.
but this is also limited in our zone, and this is a very small subsection of only R. This is what I specifically remember Connor looking up.
Say that again?
We don't have many
You're
pure,
right, almost everything is mixed, is a mixed overlay. It's not a.
very, very limited.
The sun.
So do we want to comment on it or not? What's the feeling?
Just say we're against it, no. Or it, I don't know, but I just don't.
Okay, so which number is it again?
I think we make a statement saying that we're really all the things, our takeaway is. The new commercial and residential regulations. And we do not focus in on that. Focus on that environmental stuff, in a city that doesn't enforce anything.
I know. Okay, so we can just, for proposal 16, Carter, then we can just say, and therefore, we oppose this proposal for our community board.
I
Done.
mean, our six area, I'm just looking at a couple of them, don't even, the only. Very few that, I mean, it's that West Fourth.
Yeah,
What very few ones, 6 hours.
Even ours are mapped in the middle of blocks, so the corners aren't even.
But you seem to be taking exception to that
Common.
by saying that CPC should not have approval through an authorization. You want to just forget that you said that? Or is that George speaking?
I think we agreed, because whenever he said that just city planning could do something, or the Board of Standards and Appeals could do something without any community
So
board
let's-
input.
let's just leave our objection to that. That seems more significant.
Yeah, this is a case where I think the whereas doesn't really match up with the therefore be resolved, right? I mean,
And that's what I'm trying to point out, because you made that point originally, and I thought that was really good.
Okay, well, we've got 16 done then. Got that pared down. Are we, I'm sort of a linear person, so I'd like to go through and make sure that I want to be sure that we've covered everything. I've heard a lot about.
Katie, so you're saying 16 is done, so we're leaving it as is,
We're just saying CPC should not have approval through an authorization hearing. And then that's in the, whereas, therefore, is, we oppose this proposal for our community boards. Or what?
You should say something about. We're talking about number 16. So in number 16, say, in the whereas.
Body.
Make the therefore into the whereas for number 16.
Therefore.
Oh, I see, yeah, okay.
Yeah, just the rest of what you said after authorization hearing, the rest.
Put in there.
Say,
Yeah,
number 16, and I think you would just have to, in the whereas, set up the content of the proposal. Whatever it is about number 16, whereas number 16 would reduce the, or would enable CPC to install a corner store with nothing more than an authorization hearing, period. And then in the therefores, we oppose a simple authorization hearing as a mechanism.
So the wherefore is a summary of,
yeah.
It's-
or I mean, the
Based on-
whereas is a summary and then therefore is the comment, yeah.
Okay. We're going to comment on 3. And are we? And what is our therefore be it resolved for number 4?
There isn't one.
I know, it doesn't. Oh, put in. Well.
I think that we've made a lot of good progress by figuring out what we're gonna do in the wherefore, and what we're gonna do in the therefore. And that with that information, you you and Eugene can move forward, or you can put it in as a Google Doc and we can all work on it in the next few days.
There is a Google Doc, we can share it.
You
It
share
is in a
it.
Google Doc.
No, we can,
I will add everyone to the.
yeah.
But maybe we should decide as a group which ones we want to focus on and which ones we want to eliminate.
Well, I'm just on number 6, just like on a conceptual basis. Are we still agreed, and I'm gonna let Donna lead on this, that we want to keep, that we need a separate eating and drinking use group so that we can focus on it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's part of what.
That would be horrible if we
But he
lost that.
said, because the other uses in 6 don't have the same impacts, having an eating and drinking establishment.
That's already the case,
What do you mean?
meaning that use group 6 already has all. those.
But there was a success, right? So it's kind of.
Yeah, which
I mean, if that doesn't matter,
most of our buildings are
I mean, everybody's going in with the 6.
because they're built after A, B, and C were put in. Just.
Well, we were requesting that,
Speaking,
they have a separate, that it be somehow separate so we could focus on it.
Right,
Instead of this huge collapse, and you're saying now we have a small
what
collapse.
the issue was with that is the dancing was previously precluded.
Right.
But for us in our building style, once you introduce that use, it comes with impacts, which are much more complicated to mitigate, which is sound. And so when you have an allowable use, and we hear this all the time, for example, in tenement buildings, when you allow dancing, you get noise. That's the issue, and again, that keeps coming back to the environmental standards of impacts. And it's also, for some restaurants, we've seen a movement towards a little more entertainment through music and louder music. And over, and so that's the impact. Is again, the music.
Yeah.
In older buildings.
In every building, I mean, we had that club on the Bowery, the Lower Bowery, remember they were gonna create that specially built box, you never hear anything, I mean, that's how, we don't know if it'll happen or not, but that's how seriously they took it, that was.
Where is
the only-
it?
It was in the hotel, on the Bowery, kind of at the south part of our district, and they were building a club in it. And the only way they were gonna get around the noise issue, and this was not an old building, was to have this super designer who was he did the most unbelievable soundproofing. It was like they're making a silent, box within the building.
An escape room?
So I mean, and obviously we've seen that there's the city noise codes are not necessarily as helpful as people would like to see because of what they actually measure in the code. But the impact here is which is they're allowing entertainment into the mix. And before entertainment, which I don't know if it's defined, but we talk about entertainment level music.
Right.
Well, is
That-
someplace in this text amendment have to do with allowing more dancing?
In number
It
9,
removes the restriction, it doesn't, you get to the allowance for it by removing it,
Okay,
and this was,
but we haven't, I don't see that in here, should.
number 9.
Nightlife, it's nightlife.
Okay,
so it's not the dancing, it's the volume of the music. And I think we heard, and Donna, maybe you remember, the noise code hasn't been touched in 3 decades
Yeah,
or something,
something like
and they had addressed it now. But it doesn't take into account this change.
I remember Michael was asking, where do they tell you how many instruments? Apparently, Michael, correct me
Yes.
if I'm.
That is correct. There used to be a limitation on the number of instruments, the number of live performers, and that's gone.
Yeah.
And I think that's a weakness.
Because I don't think anybody here is saying we don't want that. What we're saying, what we're concerned about, again, is the impact.
We're
Always.
concerned about the impact, and we're concerned about the fact that there's no consideration for what would be too much.
Right. And I think that depending on the type of building construction, you have different outcomes. But this doesn't take into account any of that. And we have so many older, buildings that this is an issue because they never anticipated this. And I mean, now you can very inexpensively buy a sound reproduction device. And I say that because there's a million different things of what that is. That can play stuff very loud, produce a lot of bass, produce a lot of volume.
A lot of vibration.
A lot of vibration, all of that. And that's what the issue is that comes with dancing. It's not the dancing itself.
Right.
And
No, it's morphing into a disco.
and I don't necessarily disagree with some of the reasons they address those issues. But it gets to another point where dancing is an impact on quality of life.
Yeah,
Again, environmental impacts,
yes.
noise, vibration, etc. That's our problem.
Well, how is the whereas for number 6 then? And, George does say that, we have to be more, that use groups have to be modernized, and this is a sort of an important development in the planning world. But in our particular community board, we have a real problem with lumping eating and drinking in with everything else, because this is, we're saturated, and we feel it's helpful to us to have it separated. Any revisions in the whereas or in the therefore?
Can you repeat how the therefore reads?
You want
does
the therefore?
Yes, could you please repeat that?
I gotta get to
3B.
keep eating and drinking within its own use group, currently 6, as this particular use has proven to be the most problematic, and so that the CBs can continue to address the special issues with these types of businesses. It's only going to get worse with the new outdoor dining.
Right.
Can you add something here about it requires a high level of performance and environmental standards? I think that's what we're asking for in this therefore.
Okay.
We may ask for its own use group,
Well,
but qualify it, right? Because that it should have its own framework of environmental measurement.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it could stay in the same use group, provided that the definition includes a high level of performance and environmental standards. I think we could leave it there, but be more specific in what we're asking for.
And for us, I mean, and the other recognition is that, for us, a lot of this is people are not able to easily pick up and move in New York when there's an impact.
Right.
And this is retroactive. Or not retroactive, but this is applicable to existing scenarios. And this
Which is
can create
We've
a
been hearing a lot of
significant
this.
allowable impact
It could create.
by reducing.
One thing is new buildings, but retrofitting our old historic districts, with these post regulations, retrofitting our old buildings is chaotic. And you're right, it will decimate people who don't have the financial ability to just pick up and leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've seen examples of where it works and where it doesn't. But the ultimate arbiter is, can you hear it? Can you not hear it?
Yeah.
So without that, I mean, this is for any community, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but we have a lot of experience, so it's
Katie,
framing it that way.
with in the whereas part of number 6, if you said, this reworking of the use groups provides well-needed modernization. But this section is an example where the one-size-fits-all approach of citywide text amendments does not work for community board 2.
It's a tough one politically, but I agree. But,
Yeah.
We can't even get something from the sheds, you know.
Gotta say it.
Compared to this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carter, do you know, or anybody, do you know, the number of lots that are in CB2?
It's a completely different part of the minimum.
Oh.
Exercised in a while.
You mean JLWQA units or a loft, or what do you mean?
Lofts, because,
But what
This
is
goes-
loft is a lot of different.
Yeah.
Is it a living loft? That's why I laugh, because we're always struggling with this.
yeah, because I don't know so much on the loft side. But I would assume that it's only residential, or is it mixed use? Sometimes.
Mixed use.
No,
Next
no,
to-
well, a loft building, a JLWQA unit is joint live work quarters for artists
Yeah.
and work as a creation.
So,
Yeah,
So, like-
so that's not, doesn't allow, except for whatever the requirements are for a home occupation. I mean, Eugene, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 25%, right?
The 25 what?
Currently.
Currently, for home occupation, in a law, in a
5%.
JLWQA unit, it would be 25%.
It is 25%, although I have to say, going from 25 to 49, it's not like I've ever seen or heard of the 25% itself being enforced. So it just seems like going from 25 to 49 is arbitrary. I mean, what's to say it's 49 or 89? No one is in there measuring any of this.
Right.
Do you remember, is it the number of lofts, was that about 1,600? Is that number, am I getting
Oh,
that?
I don't know. That sounds about right. I mean, I think it's like under 2,000.
Yeah,
because.
Also, JLWQA units are separate from home occupation. Home
Right.
occupation is like
Yes, they are.
when you have a therapist in a residential building on the Upper West Side or something. Like JLWQA units are like a very specific SOHO, NoHo thing that's subject to the multiple dwelling law. That's where it's defined. It's
Right.
not. And the 25% doesn't apply to necessarily to JLWQA units, I don't believe. I think the 25% is just for home occupation.
That's
Yeah, I
correct.
think it could
Because
be like up to 100%.
They take it to city planning.
Sorry,
It's got to live in their own.
go ahead.
How did you bring it up?
Because I have heard complaints from community members who live in lofts, who have to deal with a lot of parties that happen on higher floors. And so this whole thing is just kind of like I'm connecting the dots here. Lofts have often separate elevators, which here would be allowed for them to apply to be commercial in a way, like nightlife, I'm hearing, event spaces that could be turned into cultural spaces. All of that could qualify under, occupancy limits of 75. All of that could, so there's a lot of questions here that I'm.
Yeah, and I think lofts, because of their large floor plates, are just very tempting to be converted into commercial uses because they have the space available to run
Definitely.
businesses, right? We're not talking about like a small Upper East Side apartment where, you're physically limited to like a 600 square foot apartment. I mean, these are like 3,000 square foot spaces that, really call out for creative uses. I mean, they're very expensive spaces at this point as well. Right.
But most of that's already been addressed. And
By the rezoning.
yeah, by the rezoning, I'm not so sure that this impacts.
We don't know that.
it
Well-
overlays on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, but you already can have mixed uses in loft buildings.
Right.
You know, this isn't seemingly allowing anything else.
Well, I
More-
believe a home office would now allow, home occupation, sorry, not home office. Home occupation would now allow almost anything, because there is no restriction on what is considered a home occupation, is my understanding, right? Is that this eliminates the list.
It's
Yeah.
uses that are allowed in C2, I believe.
Which is pretty large list.
Yeah, but it's not everything. It's not
Not
like,
everything, right,
but
okay.
but it is a large list. Like they used to have uses that were specifically barred. And I think
Mhm.
that was like barber shops and things, because I think some of them were to target foot traffic. Going, because
Okay.
the way that you have separation between like we were talking about the 15-foot barrier, and that you have to have separation on a floor that has residential and commercial, that doesn't apply to home occupation. Home occupation is literally just you're using some of your apartment for work. And so that will affect residential elevators, residential common spaces, because there's no separation there. It's a residential building, but you can now have
Yeah.
occupations much
That's
more
right.
explicitly in those buildings. So there could, if your neighbor opens up a barber shop in 49% of their apartment, like you're gonna witness that.
Right.
People will come down your hall for haircuts, basically.
Right, because there's no limit on foot traffic, and there's also no limit on hours of operation for.
They set like environmental, they say like it can't be this, and this, but it's an
Right.
enforcement issue. Like it's very vague, and we don't know
It's
how
enforced by, it's enforced by the Department of Buildings, right?
Yeah.
The way it's written, the way it's proposed.
They enforce all
So
zoning.
George Hunter had linked to this, current use group, new use group chart. Are you familiar with that? That the city has produced that has all the old use groups and the new use group. And what I find interesting is that 17D, which is JLWQA, is not included. And would that mean that use group stays the same with the limitations of what's in the state law, unless it's converted to use group 2 by paying the fee?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
You mean like joint, like JLWK is not included in the
Right,
new
so
use group or something?
JLWQA is use group 17D as in David. That's not listed on the city's use groups as with an old and new use group. But it's defined, as you pointed out, in the multiple dwelling law, right? That's where that is
Yeah, it's
divided.
also I think it's also defined in the definitions sections of the zoning.
Yeah,
And
no,
that-
it is, right. Yeah, and I think it points back though too, right?
Do we want to ask them to clarify?
Yeah. 'cause
Well,
that's-
Chelsea is on there.
I just asked, because I'm just wondering what. If. The way you define, it's just making me think, you opened up the question of what can you do? But if it's already limited.
Oh, yeah.
If it's already limited, does this open it? Or is it still limited?
But Chelsea is here. Chelsea said we have 3,000 lots. Chelsea, do you want to be elevated? Can you illuminate this 17D situation? Are you, oh, good, okay. You've got your tech issues resolved a little bit, maybe?
Hello, hi.
Okay. Hi.
Can you hear me? Can you repeat the question?
Carter is saying that in the use groups on the chart, 17D, JLWQA is not listed in the new document. So therefore it is not covered, he thinks. And we're trying to find out if that's true.
I will need to get back to you on that. I will ask Andy about that, though.
Okay, I think we need that clarity. I think I know what to do with number 6. You'll see it and you can see if I figured that out. Number 7, we're not commenting on. Number 8, Frederica's comment is well taken. We will summarize what it says. And George, this struck me in the discussions with George. And, you know, he pointed out the failing of number 8. And the fact that, you know, we really do want to know if there's something hazardous in our community board. So we can take his recommendation on that. Number 9 is about nightlife and entertainment. And again, we can summarize it from materials that we have. And we are recommending performance standards created with community board input. I mean, that's one of the problems, you know, we don't want everything from on high. We want some things to come through. Does that sound strong enough for, therefore be resolved for nightlife and entertainment?
Number 8 was not part of George's original list that he said was important.
Yes, oh yeah, and we're gonna actually, I totally, no, keep it. Keep it,
Voiced concern.
yeah, and we're one of the places.
He gave us an example when he tried to foil them, that he would not produce it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
it
it was, I don't know what he said, but it's a risk.
Yeah, it's a hazard, but they won't tell us where it is or what the hazard is, so that's very suspicious.
Yeah.
But we'll massage that properly. Number 9. We are calling for performance standards around nightlife and entertainment. Is that strong enough?
Environmental standard.
Sorry, okay, yep, keep. Do we want to be more specific about which ones that we want to find for this, or?
I think it's noise, vibrations, it's introduction of a relevant and properly weighted for noise, what
Well, it says in the
different scales for noise, for bass, and things like
it
that.
says in the document, clarify zoning to regulate nightlife based on capacity of the business.
Yeah.
Rather than the type of live entertainment. So maybe we should say we're uncomfortable with unlinking the capacity with the type.
So what the end goal, without knowing how to write this, right, is that what we want there is to be measurements so that that impact, the environmental impact, is not greater than whatever that measurement is in adjoining residential or commercial establishments with perhaps 2 different measurement levels for each.
Not adjoining, surrounding.
Surround, right?
Yeah.
Yes, surround. So that there is a New York City noise code, but if you're in the same building, the residential units don't hear, you know, all the different sounds. What was?
Well, do you want to say?
It's called the weight.
The way it's applicable, DC.
The DCA.
Do you want to say based on the possibility of an increase in mixed uses, we are uncomfortable with, we were as interested in the capacity of the business as we are in the type of entertainment.
The capacity, I get that. I don't think that's a problem, and I think that
The
you're
sound.
right to do that,
Isn't it?
it's the sound.
Right.
And the reason is because they,
Capacity
my-
of guys and less dust.
But
the way it's framed, I agree with, because it's replicating safety standards of what cabaret format was, which allowed dancing, but was really about occupancy. Is how do you get a lot of people out safely in the dark? That's related drinking, et cetera, right? You know, they did away with that. So now they're trying to address it differently. So the capacity, I'm fine with that. it just, no matter a big place or a small place, it's the noise.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the noise generated mechanically from, you know, having some way to measure that. And I don't think the hours of operation are even an issue, because that happens through another mechanism. It's really impact is. And that's no different than a vending, right? For example, which is not addressed, which is smells, odors, sound, vibration. And the odors is now a new thing. And Dave might know more about this, because the electric kitchens, they have different venting requirements, but that doesn't mean it doesn't smell. So
It's just not an open flame, doesn't mean that there's no.
right, and in fact, with the city going away from gas, most kitchens are electric, and you can't even get a gas sign off without, you know, however long that takes. So
Takes longer than the whole.
so you know, odor is another thing as well for the larger places with the bigger kitchens. So.
Okay. I'll add that in. Okay, I think I know where to go on that. It is late. I'm going to charge us along a little bit. Number 10 is amusements. And Eugenia and I were speaking about this today. We thought we would discuss here. I mean, I can just imagine, since I have grandchildren of the correct age, I can imagine large lots, you know, with a bumper car installation for these birthday parties that kids seem to go to 2 or 3 in a weekend. So I don't think Susan wants a bumper car installation above her head. So, you know, Carter had brought up a couple of large slides, and then George had this, I don't know, terrifying, a picture of a terrifying ride from floor 30 to floor 20. I don't know, you know, that I would never go on, but people would go on, and might be somewhere in Hudson Square. Disney might like to put something in, right? So,
I mean, I think there are just so many experiential things that are opening up that are, you know, these types, but not our typical, what we think of as entertainment. And I don't know if you want that. You know?
yeah. Right.
The question becomes again about making it, how do you enforce these things? And how does the language get put in? Because in all the cases, or the slide situation, is experiential. We have another so-called proposed museum, but its use group is an office. You know, it's like,
Yeah. Well,
how do you get to a place where you can have people actually inform the rules?
It sounds very difficult. I think we'll go with Frederica's suggestion. In the whereas these proposals present a real challenge to our quality of life. And then in the therefore, we do not support this proposal.
I don't know that I said that.
No, well, we just,
The amusement, it becomes destination,
Right.
which
okay, fine.
we have some destination locations, and then we have residential.
Okay.
See, it's the potential for it to be disastrous.
Yeah.
Without further control.
Now, number 11 is something that we really had a great deal of discussion about. We've already talked about it tonight because it's just so difficult.
That deserves a nice fleshed out. I know you imagine reading it at full board and people's eyes glazing over, but I think it's really important that we present a really good argument on this one.
Well, and I think people will Well, before, everyone will be interested in it. This is close to the bone.
And you have good things in the whereas that you might want to move to the, might either consolidate into the therefore or replace some of the therefores.
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance to read it. The points are good in the whereas.
This is a very good one for us.
Yep.
So-
That is.
I mean, the number is-
That is of what we're doing.
Sorry, Katie, the numbers are important too, because now, with people working from home, you could see a whole building could have home office, could just transform the number of people in and out and
Yeah,
that we haven't even, thought about earlier.
but yeah. I mean,
Residential units that people don't live in anymore. They're investment units. You could easily see those becoming their New York office.
Yes.
and then on the flip side is that everyone's home for lunch and all those delivery people are coming in, which makes a lot of traffic in my building. In my little teeny building, there's a lot of ringing the wrong doorbell and, and it's very, they're very disruptive. We dealt with 12. We're not going to discuss, we all decided we're not discussing 13. Number 14 is the store delivery centers, micro distribution. And we had said last time that we wanted consumer access to all stores. Sort of crazy to create these, I don't know, black holes.
I feel that we haven't seen the right design yet, because it's obvious we need this.
Yeah.
And it's obvious for exactly the reasons you mentioned, Katie. Is that it would be helpful if, just like you used to be able to go to UPS, way far away, at least for me, to go get something that couldn't be delivered, you have to go all the way to the west side. How do you do that on a bigger level for some of these private delivery companies? I mean, that's a help, but flip side is the way we've seen this done from the early 2000s to now, it doesn't seem to quite work. And they tried to make it so you could go into some of these stores, right?
They don't
And
want to.
they don't really
Yeah.
want to, so it doesn't really work, but this, we were, it may have been in CB3, but we had one of the first home delivery businesses way back in the early .com time period before we had this, and that was a little bit more of a storefront.
What was that,
That was Cosmo.
Oh, my gosh. Wait, what is the name?
And then there was the green company, the green urban something, I believe. So we had this model, but it never worked, but we need it if we want to solve other problems, but we don't have a example. I mean, Connor, I think, had talked about this a lot more and had some good ideas, just talking about the dark storefronts, which is what we don't want. But how do you have engagement? I don't know the answer. But it's obvious that we don't need people, taking over the streets and sidewalks.
It's just something that, everybody's gonna feel the same way about that. I feel like we could skip this one, frankly.
Well, it could.
Focus
The
on
reason
some of the others that are.
came up is because I think our electeds have commented on,
Sidewalks.
from our council members
Yeah.
to our state electeds, I believe.
Have to superintend that.
No, but I think we should have a commentary of what we don't want.
Mhm.
Which are the not, however it's
Okay, so
framed, but I think it's an important. Because we heard a lot of this during COVID, right, with the Getter stores and the other things. In fact, I think there was I would like to support our electeds on this by having some language.
well, we can keep it in. I mean,
I don't,
Gail Brewer, who is not our elected official, but she's been very strong on this and very active. and effective, I think. So we'll keep it.
Because they want to put these in the same place that are the central points, and that's the problem. If the real estate's cheap enough, you suddenly, your old space that was a good place to go to, for example, where a pharmacy might be, suddenly is no longer available for anybody to go to and becomes a micro distribution center because it costs, but that's not what we want.
Right.
But there are ways it could work.
Well, I'm thinking of the Dwayne Reed that's been vacant for probably 3 years on the corner of 12th and 7th.
Yeah.
It's one big dark store now because there's nobody in it. So, and it's got the windows are all fogged up.
Right,
So is that pleasant, or would it be better if we said, you can do these things, but you can't make them dark? You
And-
must, I mean, if you could see in and you could see people working, and it would be an improvement over a fogged up blank window.
and
But one's temporary. Which is the,
Well,
Not
maybe
being
not
occupied.
necessarily.
no, but being not occupied. Is a is
This
not,
is very not permanent.
yeah, why don't, well, this is
And those places won't be a permanent need anyway.
this is a casualty of the closing of St. Vincent's. Of all those stores on that block served it, there was the uniform store and the, yeah.
Now it's chronic.
yes,
or is it a restriction on a lender,
on a what?
from a lender?
No, they are advertising.
No, meaning that they can't go below, so.
Well,
I don't
the
know.
only, the
I'm just
only,
saying it's an example of a lot of frontage that's
Yeah.
not active.
the only recommendation we've had so far, which does follow on what Gail Brewer wanted uptown, was that people have to be able to go in. That was the only,
That's a good point.
okay, so then that.
Well, we have those below. I mean, we have the FedEx on Seventh Avenue, upstairs on the second. floor.
Yeah.
But they don't deliver to it to deliver out of.
Right. I understand, but we've been talking about the future of the zoning. The zoning is gonna be in place for many, many years. People are not accepting packages because the rates theft and they're not home. I could see a lot of these mini distribution centers where people are allowed to come in. Maybe the Dwayne Reed is too big. Maybe we say not more than 10,000 square feet or not more than 5,000 or 8,000. But, and they can't use the sidewalks for this, they can't do that. We could put a lot of restrictions on it. But I think that the idea of neighborhood distribution centers is not a bad idea. If it's open to the public where they can actually get your package delivered to, well, they do that, isn't it UPS store on West Street? Was it Charles or something by Washington Street? They don't have delivery there.
It used to be, I think it's Sixth Avenue now, is it?
I don't.
Most of the UPS stores.
Or was it a
I don't
FedEx?
use them all the time, but it's.
I know that.
Drop off stuff.
I know.
No, you don't pick up, you drop off.
No, but they're,
I mean,
but listen to me.
They're not
I've
distribution.
got those tags on my building saying your package, if you want to pick up your package, call this number, and they send you over the place in the village.
They use the big monster UPS place.
What's that?
He sent you to the huge UPS place.
The one on
Yeah, now you
On
can,
10th
now
Street.
you can tell them the different
10th
places.
Street,
They do.
the place, it's open, you can pick up your package here and you can bring it in, you know, and they've got storage here and then I'm.
Well, that's.
I think a lot of
what we
these
said.
places, just looking at what goes on the street and some of the food places are not the same as that and would not necessarily want people in because people are not there to pick up packages or they are
I
not
get
to
what they
receive
want, but-
packages. It's strictly to like a loading area to unload and then distribute out of.
That's what they want.
Yeah, that's what they're proposing.
You know.
So, I don't know if any of you have gone by any of this, some of the new, like Amazon distribution facilities. They're huge.
Right.
And what they have is all these cars pulling up because they privatize a lot of the delivery as well as some of the vans or whatever. That's not what we, no, that's right. And so I think there's room for this.
Well, where are they,
without-
Carter? Where could you see one of these?
No, there's a place for this, we just have to talk
No, no.
about.
Oh, example of this Amazon thing, I haven't seen.
They're, Red Hook, I think, has two.
Oh.
They're everywhere. And they're
Okay.
towns all over, you know, the
Okay.
northeast.
Also about the Getter
Well,
Yeah.
that's a different,
That's more.
that's a, right, and that's a delivery.
Really dark.
But you think of all the little Amazon packages that you see them distributed and then delivered out to the guys coming out of a truck. But I just don't think this is,
No, I'm not talking,
Fine.
nobody's talking about that.
no, but that's what this is.
Yeah, but I'm
Small-
talking about neighborhood micro distribution centers, neighborhood places.
Right. and this-
Can we ask for a limitation on the amount of a of a block front that can be devoted to local distribution? Can we say a limitation, no more than 25% of a block front? That might help.
I mean,
Their proposal is by square footage in C1 and C2 and in C4 and C7. And would not, and would prohibit papering over windows to detour dark score.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that. It's what does it mean for coming in and out? Again, that's what it.
What does it mean for all the bikes that are gonna be there or whatever else?
Or when the
Yeah.
delivery comes in the morning, because that's when the truck comes in.
These are issues, but
Right.
these, we can't just throw out the baby to the bathwater, you know?
So what are we going to?
I mean, I had a personal experience of a micro distribution center outside of my bedroom window for, 3 to 4 months of the truck showing up, at 6:30
They had
in
a
the
store, they
morning,
actually had a store.
dropping the loading gate.
They had a store there.
And no.
It's on the sidewalk.
It's like some food, some other distribution, some store, I don't even remember. The loading thing going up and down, rolling off the
Oh.
carts, putting all the stuff on the street, putting this box there, putting that box there. Then the other people come, some in their cars, double parked, pulled up, and there's the occasional beeping. And the bicycles come up to do the same thing, and then the guys by hand. And wouldn't that be better in a facility, but you'd still have all that activity. So I don't know.
Right, but that doesn't mean that we can't say those are the problems that we have to address.
That's right, that's
You know,
what should be in there, but we need them.
That's right. I
So,
don't think that I'm ready to say that micro distribution centers, local neighborhood ones, are all bad. I just don't think so. I think we need to say here, as you said, performance standards and understand
Environmental.
need to be put in.
What if we advocated for that as a use, but requiring a special permit? That would at least then permit, I mean, that would give the community review process.
You mean we'd have a measure of review before we approve?
Yeah,
That's
right.
what the special permit is supposed to do anyway.
Yeah, I think if we give that, we lack specificity in what are the impacts. Because I don't see that as realistic,
Viable.
For the special permit.
for a special permit.
Well, sure. I mean, you could put the requirements in the special permit.
No, we didn't.
Be the special-
Good luck.
we'll get enough.
Special permit gives you a measure of review. It's not an as of right.
Moving on.
Yeah, I think so.
So what are you putting in on this one, though? I'm willing to move on, but I just don't, I'm not clear.
So what is the decision here?
The decision is, I feel, to me, maybe people disagree, but I'm not ready to say no micro distribution. I think that we need to put standards in and make it a neighborhood distribution center and not have what Carter had under his window, but putting it into a facility. And I think that we have to think more and hard about what kinds of requirements, what kind of restrictions, mitigation that we need to put on this number 14. Right, that's what my opinion is, but others may have a different opinion on that.
I mean, the big, was what Anita, who was here before, I think brought up, Frederick brought up is storage, right? Because storing the stuff is what allows a proper in and out of the material, so it's not as impactful.
Well, we said that in the loading dock, but this,
This is not dissimilar.
I know, but the only thing is, people want their prime, so their packages will be coming in for delivery in a day or two. Not, like something like you could get a load of clothes and not get another load of clothes for 5 days. I think micro distribution by definition is more frequent than you would like it.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
That's actually my point is that you can get it there and then whoever's doing the last mile can come at their speed, not like doing it on the street right then and there.
But you would agree that pedestrians, customers have access to go in the store.
Sure.
You know, that's one. Then it becomes like a UPS.
You can't put that in. Codes that you would require.
Of course.
You can have it so they can, what you need is companies that make.
No, you could put in that if you want to have a micro distribution center, it needs to be open, you know, for public access, you know. Why-
And
why would
we
that-
already have done
Why
it
would
in the
that be
city.
not in the zoning
We've already done it in the city.
or in a
so I
special
think-
permit? What's that?
They utilize it.
Okay, utilize it, whatever you want to say, but it certainly would be an appropriate,
For the trucks right now.
an appropriate condition in a resolution, a zoning. This thing, I think there's gonna be so much. People are gonna go crazy, unless this mayor is pushing this through at record speed, I don't know.
You know, that's a question for Roy.
Getting excited or something. Let's get it.
Roy. What, I mean, what? Does the city council, Chelsea, does the city council have to approve this, city of yes and a vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
So-
right.
So do we know, Roy, maybe you know, what do the city, I mean, what are city council members thinking about it? If the city council has to approve it, then are they on board?
I
Right.
think they're waiting to hear from community groups and community boards.
They're gonna respond to us.
Oh, you're.
And it's also why they give us the worksheet, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I think a lot of city council offices haven't
This
even
whole thing about
or read
the
it.
curbside delivery,
What's that?
you know, the Manhattan Borough President already asked the pilot. I don't know if it's just Manhattan, but I know there is a pilot for the curbside. Got the name.
Drop off? I don't know.
The pickup drop off.
Distribution, micro distribution.
Micro distribution. There's something out there, I think, but that's already kind of happening.
You know, delivery thefts are going rampant. People,
Oh, I
I
know.
was reading the numbers, that's crazy.
The key word here is micro, and I think we need to emphasize small scale. Micro, small scale in our neighborhood.
Local.
Local.
Yes.
Local. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Local.
Local, that very, very helpful. Okay, number 17. We're totally, you know, we're totally in, sponsored, I think. We're not commenting on 15 and 16. Okay, from our last meeting.
We're skipping. Okay, and 16?
16, no comment from our last meeting.
Okay, so we're at 17.
I want to point out that the 4 pages of questions answered from DCC.
Right.
Got it, right for the meeting. They gave you, they responded with 2 pages and did not mention one place where input was reduced.
I know.
They
Yeah.
did not answer the question at all.
Or
So
non-existent.
They just said everything was good
They
for us.
described them, they reiterated what they were about. They
Yeah.
didn't answer our question. So I think we should not let that pass. Like we're idiots who don't understand what question we asked. They make it easier, these proposals make it easier for community boards to do their jobs by modernizing and clarifying.
By leaving them out of the process.
But don't say where we have review, where we don't have review, they never say it doesn't change. So I just don't think that's the proper.
Does it go in this document or in a separate?
No, I think I call them tomorrow morning and say, thanks for this, but I'm sorry if our question wasn't clear.
Yeah. Okay. And but number 17 actually is to this point.
Well, this is just about waivers.
I know, but it's about the philosophical point.
Right, but I think we can't decide if we want to opine beyond waivers unless we get the answer to the questions. And I wondered why you singled out buildings in Hudson Square.
That was something that was mentioned in the discussion.
Like to do it out because maybe there are new buildings in other areas, and if we don't mention it, then we should be.
Okay.
But I don't think, Eugene, did you read what they sent back? You got a minute?
The DCP responses? No, I agree that they didn't answer our question.
Okay.
We will
What
respond. We will respond.
What number was Hudson Square in,
17.
oh, I see, it's over here.
In the-
Yeah.
Therefore,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, in the whereas.
yeah.
And if you look at number 9, in the response, where it says nightlife businesses today face confusing and arbitrary regulations on what kinds of live entertainment they can legally operate in their space. I mean, this idea, this concept of arbitrary regulations, that phraseology has been said over and over again, but reality is a lack of a drive to enforce regulations. Because again, the impacts are what, when they say it's arbitrary, it's because they don't define the kinds of buildings. Or other issues, and that's what we're asking for next about. So I just point out even here, they only talk about what live entertainment they can have. They don't talk about it's okay in one case, but maybe not in another.
Okay, so I think Eugene and I have an assignment. I will not work on it tonight, but sometime tomorrow. I do hope that people are thinking about tomorrow because there's a hearing on open meetings at 11 o'clock. I think it's the borough president meeting, and Mark has cautioned us that if we're speaking as individuals, but I intend to speak as an individual. And or you can also submit testimony. We've received a couple of emails about that. So that'd be great. And what's on December 17th? I know there's another thing that I want to.
No, 17th is our party.
Party, no, there's another.
It's Sunday.
Yeah.
Sunday, there's something.
Yeah, no, there's another thing to comment on this week, but maybe it has not to do with the community board. But our next meeting, the full board is on the 19th, Tuesday, right? Because of, Christmas, it's not on Thursday, and it will be at the Whitney.
And just FYI, the Whitney is closed on Tuesday, so in case anybody was thinking of going early and hanging out at the Whitney, unfortunately you can't.
Thank
Not
you.
possible.
Sorry.
It's
Got some great shows on too, so you should make it back, but yeah.
It's in that beautiful room where the overlooking
Oh, so we have
river
a view of-
Yeah, I love them.
Of the beach.
of the beach and the sculpture.
It's 21, wouldn't have us every month.
I don't know. Mark can answer that question.
I heard you're talking, I would listen to him. Eavesdrop, what can I help you with?
Frederica asked whether PS 41 would have us every month or not.
They might. They might. We haven't yet worn out our welcome at the church for the SLA, so it's a possibility. I think they might eventually start charging us money if we.
PS 41?
PS 41, and we have it in with PS 130, although I don't know the building.
Where's that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the.
Well, this is over is going to the Whitney.
That
Same.
I know,
Okay.
I'm thinking we kind of get it.
Get more in the middle, yeah.
And
Well, we don't
Scholastic
know
has
anymore.
no meetings anymore, so
Say again?
Scholastic has no public meetings anymore.
Scholastic no longer exists as far as I can tell, because they have not returned any of our calls, emails, or entreaties from, is David here? From.
I mean, the
David
building's
was trying
open.
and-
I see it every day.
Yeah, and they actually have people going in and out of it now.
Yeah.
And yet they have absolutely no interest in returning a call from them.
Oh, we may not be calling the right people.
We're calling the same people that Bob always called before, so.
Yeah, maybe it was.
They didn't want us as before.
Renovated
the building.
That's, I think, the point is that when they renovated the building,
So the
now
opportunity.
you gain access to the whole building. Whereas before you could just have the separate entrance that walked into the auditorium. And so it's hard to
It's
fault
a
somebody for
security
not-
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And there are other places that are gonna charge us security fees. And that would be one, I'm sure, if they ever did return a call, that would be part of it, so. Folks just aren't, aren't as interested in, yeah, they're just not, after COVID.
Point of information, do we need to vote on the resolution?
Yes, we do need to vote. Thank you, Michael. So we do need to vote on this resolution. So
Go
can I
ahead.
call for a vote? Can I see a show of hands, everyone in favor of this resolution? Anyone not in favor? Okay, it looks like it's unanimous. All right, great, thank you, and apologies for not showing up in person, but I caught COVID this week, so, yes, probably don't want me there.
No.
Hope you feel better.
All right, are we gonna adjourn?
Just that we didn't, talk about section 2.
Section 2.
No, well, we had earlier decided that, well, it was,
It's not, I don't think it's. Anyway.
we had gone back and forth and it seemed as if we did not want to comment on it.
But I hope that you'll rewrite this to be, I mean, this is his opinions. And it needs to be a little more formal.
I mean, it could have just been a straight response of yes, there is no reviewer, there is review study.
No, I'm saying
The
in the
introduction.
opening paragraph
That we
of
quoted
our
from him.
I'd like to wish it was a little more in our language. And I think you could say, well, did we decide we were gonna eliminate this?
No, there was,
I,
no one bid on that. People,
okay, does everybody want us to have this,
This is
the
Bob.
first whereas
Know about it.
with
the
these
themes, I mean, we had
David and Carter?
conclusion.
Beginning of the first whereas, where it talks about the following issues, if we're not gonna say it on those.
Still on?
I think right there, do we wanna do that at all?
If anybody can hear anything, but I do think we're
See if
still
we're
on.
gonna stand on this.
And just, the concept of use is gonna be covered extensively in our.
Well, we've already voted, so, I'm a little,
Oh, but we didn't vote on it. Of course, you guys are going to
Yeah.
work on. So what we're talking about is the
What's that?
structure of it.
Well-
But I do,
The text amendment is hostile to housing. You
Right,
don't wanna
but I-
throw that
I
out
do-
without any.
I do think
What, do
that,
we?
I do think. We keep talking about it over and over again, right? Is the quality of life impacts. And I think it should lead with that.
yeah.
Is just like, we don't want to muck this up with a lot of other stuff, because what we
Yeah.
care about,
That's the essence.
Right.
it's, we
The
have,
excuses
we
and the
have a
quality
lot
life.
of, flex, stuff going on.
That's better.
It's just.
The impact.
Yeah.
Impact of
Nobody cares if they're doing it, if it doesn't have.
That's the expense of one over the other, because remember, this didn't mention residents.
So that's what I think should go
Right.
in, as opposed to whatever it just said about housing. It's not really housing, it's the residents, there's no consideration
Yeah.
of the impacts on the residents.
No, I don't.
These-
We're
I think
very,
we're suggesting
um,
that you not say this and you just focus on quality of life and the effect of mix of
but-
commercial and residential in the same building,
Yeah, and that,
And the other changes.
because they didn't help us with that.
and it's basically taking like performance standards, reframing that as environmental.
For the
standards,
environment.
Yeah.
And putting in
Well,
parentheses.
we'll work on this, but I
Yeah.
still feel that actually what you're talking about here, this is what you're talking, these themes.
Yes, should be up there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
also lose the theme, because that's up.
No, but it's having them in this very cursory, it's not.
We done fine.
It was when I suggested that, it was with the intention that we would flesh them out.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Right.
Take care.
And being so patient for.
We,
This, I think, yeah. That point somewhere is where that we
Oh, yeah,
learned that.
we've seen that, and we actually say that. Okay,
Thank you, Connor, for staying on.
yeah, and for helping
Thank
out so
you.
much, thank you. Okay, this is for Mark.
No, I actually, let me have this back 1 sec. I didn't put down a comment.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
We are gonna.
Valerie, Susan, Connor,
oh, I didn't see
Uh,
Valerie, Susan, I saw,
Pete Davies, Jeff Rowland.
Yeah.
okay. I didn't see Valerie. Her name didn't come up. Let's go out and warm up. Oh, God.
The glass, yeah, the uninsulated windows.
Yep.